So good morning, everyone, once again. Um, so this morning, I decided to use this session as a tribute to Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Um, I wasn't organized enough to invite people to join in or anything like that, but I was just I knew there will be a few of you, so I'm glad that there are quite a few of you here on Zoom. And so the idea of this session is to remember who Lama Zopa uh, was and is, and reflect on his life, and and so see the importance of his contribution to the spread of Buddhism in the world, and then talk a little bit about the nature of his death, which is quite a shocking sudden death. It wasn't a kind of a long ill health or anything like that. So there's a little bit of concern that, as was death of Lama Yeshe. So both of these two are quite important things to reflect. Um, so um, um, I would give an opportunity to any one of you who have met Lama Zopa and have some connection to reflect and pay tribute to. So, and there may be others who have heard of him but not met him. So it will be useful for people to actually hear the life experience, or however brief they may have been. Um, but I will firstly talk about a little bit about my friendship and connection of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Um, Actually, I would have not been in Australia, let alone teaching all these years, if it wasn't Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe's persuasion for me to come to do translation work, firstly in Dharamsala in 1982, the big Dharma celebration they hosted in Tushita Meditation Center, where then the Lama Yeshe sent me a telegram when I was in Kathmandu, urging me to come to Dharamsala to translate for the very big Dharma celebration, at which His Holiness Ling Rinpoche, that's His Holiness Dalai Lama's senior tutor, as well as Serkon Rinpoche, His Holiness Dalai Lama's debate partner, as well as His Eminence Zong Rinpoche, a very eminent Lama from Ganden Monastery. They were giving Chakra Sambhara, Yamantaga, Guya Samanja, and church teachings. So, because Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe, I've been doing some translation work at those done there in Kopan. This is in 1982, early 1982, and so they realized this was a big important teaching, the highest Anuttara Yoga teachings, and so they invited me. I haven't met both Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa before then, except at few teachings that both of them gave in Kopan. I attended because I was living there for nearly 1 year, but never actually got to meet them. But when they invited me to Dharamsala, of course, I got to spend a lot of time with them, and then subsequently also back in Kopan. So both Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa was very kind to me, and they really boosted my inspiration. I didn't have much those days because I was a little bit um, disillusioned with the certain systems that I was brought up in, because I was brought up in Nepal and exposed to the modern education and how we were placed in exile and situations. So, but the very many Western disciples of Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa who I came to meet, who some of them also came to visit on pilgrimage. Lumbini has sort of enticed my interest oh, there's a hope of Buddhism if that many people are showing interest. So anyway, so to cut the long story short, I got to work with Lama Zopa on a lot of translation work, both on the Chenrezig Gyawa Gyatso Sadhana and the Chö practice. And we spent a lot of hours translating. Our progress was very slow because Lama Zopa is so extra careful with everything. He will just think like this, and we wouldn't agree some words and the translation. And he then in the end he would decide to do divination, which word is better. So he was so careful in terms of how best that the translation will the word will be good for the benefit of all beings. So I was very much every small thing that Lama Zopa did made a lot of marking on me. Not only that, Lama Zopa is one of the few Tulgus that I have got to know, but have never discouraged me the work that he did. Because not many Tulkus have lived up to their title and status and positions. So whereas Lama Zopa, while was a fairly ordinary Tulku from Mount Everest region, but he was he enjoyed the opportunity to study at Young Lama School in Dalhousie, started by the Freda Bedi sister Kechok Palmo. So he was among those 25 young Tulkus who got to learn English. And I think Lama Zopa's English was much better than Lama Yeshe's, but Lama Yeshe's way of teaching wasn't just his English. His was hand, his was mouth, his whole Lama. Lama Yeshe just communicated to all sentient beings. Those who are auditory, who are deaf could also see Lama Yeshe teach. But Lama Zopa is a very different teacher, So at the very beginning, it's very difficult for even Westerners, most Westerners, to get much out of Lama Zopa's teaching. But those who have the actual goodness to stick through a long time, he has a really powerful way to impact many people's mind. And so anyway, I don't need to go on reviewing a lot of the works of Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe, because most of you know, and their work is very evident all over the world. And I think that Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa, because Lama Yeshe unfortunately died in mid-80s under very, very questionable circumstances because of the serious problem that his organization faced with the split of the organization due to the Shugden controversy. And so Lama Yeshe basically suffered serious, I think, nervous breakdown because of the setback caused by the very teachers that he brought to England and led them to teach, actually caused schism and broke away and took away Manjushri Buddhist Center, or whatever the center that was. And so that really broke his heart. And I don't think he ever recovered from that. He died not long after that. So there was a huge a problem created by the very people that Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa actually established the centers and invited the geishas, and in the end His Holiness Dalai Lama's decree of saying that they should stop, people who are meant to be his disciples should stop this practice, because he himself has checked and realized it's more harmful than beneficial. When he made that decree, it creates huge shock waves and causes biggest split in the Gelugpa lineage that has never suffered like that in any history since Tsongkhapa's time. And so there were many Gelugpa senior teachers were all put in this very dilemma of what to do. Most of them have been practitioners of that Shugden, and And then Lama Zopa and Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe didn't have much time to really do much. Lama Zopa, subsequent to Lama Yeshe's passing away, very strongly, totally decided to honor His Holiness Dalai Lama's direction and abandon the practice. And as a result of this, the foundation of preservation Mahayana tradition, which is Lama Zopa is the spiritual director of course, had a serious setback by having huge part of their organization being split more than in half. And this is what they call N, a new Kadamba group came out of that. But I think Lama Zopa conducted most respectfully by honoring His Holiness Dalai Lama teacher, but never challenged the people who actually broke away his organization, not sought really lawfully, whatever the case might be. But Lama Zopa completely practiced his name, Zopa, which means patience. He totally practiced patience and never challenged those, and continued the really work of a bodhisattva. I was really very witnessing that Lama Zopa's calm, and he himself had to go to that center in mid 1980s, and then he just refused to teach. He just left abruptly, saying he can't teach at that center if this is what their plan is to Lama Yeshe's wishes. But he simply left, but didn't do anything against that organization, but actually let them go. And apparently, New Kadamba group has grown strength to strength into thousands of centers, not just a couple of hundred, like FPMT is only a couple of hundred. NKT has actually. So when you look overall, the growth of Buddhism, the Gelugpa lineage, is largely through Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa. This is what I want to highlight. Even the Kadamba group, who may not be quite in the good terms with the mainstream Gelugpa lineage, but they actually are all really promoting Buddhism. They have many followers. They know how to teach, and they have many places. And these are all matter of something we should rejoice. These are really Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe's good work spreading. And even though the organization suffered a huge split, but nevertheless, Lama Zopa never did anything to challenge these people's actions, but totally let them go. So it's really, you can see he practiced what he really preached. And Lama Zopa, not only that, the centers and organization that FPMT has is one of the very effective Tibetan Buddhist organizations, mainly because the organization is not run by one person, like a Tibetan establishments, most of them are. They're mainly run by fairly well-educated Western administrators, even though the setup, how they appoint the local center's director is from top down rather than bottom up. But of course that has worked for them, so who want to question that? So because of that, they have been very effective. Some of the early visit of His Holiness Dalai Lama around the world are all invited by FPMT organizations. So they, from one point of view, they had the monopoly of organizing all the visit of His Holiness Dalai Lama, whether you can use that word or not. And they are the one who actually invited His Holiness in many places. Some people think that everything is due to His Holiness Dalai Lama's blessings. Of course we want to offer their honor, but if His Holiness Dalai Lama was not invited, or there were no Buddhists in Portugal or in Denmark or in Australia, then who would invite His Holiness Dalai Lama to receive teaching? So actually, all came from really good work of Lama Zopa's organization that has many small groups and centers, that has even our organization, as I mentioned, I wouldn't be teaching with the Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshis, and I was able to work 2 years with maybe a little bit over 2 years, including the time in India, maybe 3 years. And most of that time I spent about under a year with Lama Zopa in Kopan. And he was the most you think of the high lamas, great Kadamba monks in the 12th century, 13th century. We all think, wow. And I used to think, here is the one who's living Kadamba monk, and who's really bodhisattvic spirit. You can always see that, and he has his, and not only that, not only starting centers around the world and making it possible for many teachers to create centers like the New Kadamba group, all the New Kadamba groups, all the other Australian centers here in Australia alone, they're all due to Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa, and then the Geshes resign from there and start their own centers. So all in all, with the exception of the Kagyu and the Nyingma and Sakya centers, most of the Gelugpa centers, maybe about 95%, all due to Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa's initiative of their hard work. So that is one of the biggest legacy, that why Tibetan Buddhism has a huge following is because of the good work. They conducted the 1 month Lamrim course in Kopan every year, where hundreds of people came in, starting from the late 70s every year. And I was translating at one of those monthly courses to a number of the geishas, and as well as other courses. So the other month, the previous month, we had a conference of the Tibetan Buddhist Centers Australia, and there I could see half a dozen senior geishas. They all have spent 20 years in Australia. It's because Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa invited them. And some of them have all started their own centers and formed their own groups and so on. But these would never have happened had it not been Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa's. So that's what we need to rejoice, the amazing effect that they had. Not only that, when Sera Monastery and Sera Je in particular had many monks, but really suffering from lack of funds, not being able to feed, the monks have to go work in the field in the early 80s, late 80s, and I don't know exactly when they started. Lama Zopa single-handedly starting to create funds to sponsor all the lunches of the thousands of monks in Seraje alone. And that is just one of the small things. Likewise, there are many other places and organizations to whoever. It is said that most people go to Lama Zopa for help in Kathmandu. So he's the benefactor. He's like Zambala. And he always never said no and helped. And so Lama Zopa's work is incredibly, the positive effect is incredible. So I want to show you this photo when I was in New Zealand. Then that was in 1980, I think end of 84, 84, when I was translator with the Geshe there, and Lama Zopa visited. So this photo shows that Lama Zopa Rinpoche in the middle, and then on his right is Neil, who is now Tundrup, Venerable Tundrup, who's a resident teacher. He's from New Zealand. And then far right is me. That was like 40 years ago. And then on left of Lama Zopa is Geshe Zangpo. That's the Geshe from Serame, who I was doing the translation for. And that tall fellow is John, I think. He's our chauffeur. He was driving a big van, taking us all around New Zealand tour. So that was it. That was in 1984. And of course, then Lama Zopa gave a course up in Tahara Center in New Zealand, and so of course we all have great time with. So and then last time that I met Lama Zopa was Not before that, after I finished my term as a 2-year contract to do translation at the center in Auckland, DCI they call it, Dorje Institute. We were the first teacher and translator to come there, and those days Dharma was very, very small, really. You know, things weren't really, number of people attending and so on was not that great. Anyway, I knew that I need to do some further studies in English, particularly, because having come to the West, I thought I should do that. And then I told Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa that I could not continue to extend another term because I wanted to go and study somewhere, academic study. And then a few months later, Lama Zopa wrote to me saying, "Oh, actually, I want you to come to head a translation school that he wanted to start in Nepal or India." They weren't quite sure where to start those days, but these days that school is called Lotsawa Rinche Zangpo School in Dharamsala, and that school has now produced hundreds of translators. They give a couple of years of training and so on. But I told Lama Zopa, but I would not be able to do that because I know that I still need to have some more academic skills in the Western way of doing it. So I wasn't able to really fulfill his wish then. Then, back in 2000, this is now after a good 15 years gap, back in 2000, Lama Zopa organized Kala Chakra empowerment to be given by His Eminence Choedak Rinpoche. And of course, they both insisted I come as a translator, and I traveled to Taipei. And partly that whole Kala Chakra was a fundraising initiative for the Maitreya project, the long story Maitreya project in Bodh Gaya. And so anyway, I was able to translate the Kala Chakra in Taipei in a big hall with thousands of people there. And of course, Lama Zopa was there receiving the empowerment and doing all the necessary courtesy. And then at one moment, Lama Zopa hopped down from his throne and he came and give me a long kata. I was surprised what the hell he was doing. So while he was giving kata to His Eminence, of course, but then he realized that I was there having been doing the translation. He just hopped down out of the blue. And I said, "Oh, you shouldn't do this, Rinpoche. This is..." And so anyway, Lama Zopa has been very kind to me, and so has Lama Yeshe. So what I'm offering as a tribute today is that like many Tibetan lamas and geshes in the Gelugpa tradition have come to the West through their initiative and have founded centers and branch centers and so on. And even I, who had no intention to start the center or teach, because I knew that I need to do a little bit of academic study in the West, and then give me the momentum to actually start teaching, and then how the centers all manifested. So even though our activities and organizations, what we do, very, very minuscule in comparison with the Lama Zopa's activities, but we are also, as a result of their noble wishes and good inspiration that I receive from both Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa. Lama Yeshe's death, as I said, was mainly he didn't have a good health situation, but it was very really exacerbated by the terrible thing that people did to cause schism and split and then taking away. And now the recent death of Lama Zopa is very different, but he was nearly 80 years old, and taking him all these helicopter ride to high altitude places, up in Taplejung a couple of weeks before, and then to the Tsum region. When I saw them doing the walking in the mountain, I knew what the hell they're doing. Rinpoche looks very frail, even though he was healthy, but that's a very high altitude. And I thought, definitely, people don't know how to look after the health of this very, very senior teacher whose life is very, very precious, So I think that sometimes some of the teachers are giving so much whatever people ask, and they go everywhere, and without realizing how risky it is to go to high altitude places all of a sudden, even in helicopter. You don't do that. He was perfectly well. There was no health problem, He was his major health problem was sorted years ago, and he was still quite well. But even the day before, when I saw some video clips, I said, "What? This doesn't look safe for him at all." And he's just doing it bodhisattvically to fulfill the wishes of the people. But I was thinking, there's some of the teachers are so bodhisattvically fulfilling everybody's wishes, they're not really taking care of how unsafe it looked. They were walking on a very, very narrow little suspension bridges and taking him, the 2-3 people holding on either. It looks so precarious, might even fall, So I felt that the day before. I said, this doesn't look safe for him. And then the next day, he couldn't breathe and he broke down, and there was no hope of it. So that kind of a sudden death, there are 8 sudden deaths in Buddhism, and one of them is due to exposure to extreme weather, So that was definitely could have totally easily prevented, but of course we can say that only in hindsight, and then people were saying, the Lama Zopa's death is shocking, sad, devastated. I am exactly opposite. While his death may have been sudden and due to high altitude that is preventable, but his death is not alone. Lama Zopa and his work is immortal. And Lama Zopa's work is no match even by the 4 or 5 head of the Gelugpa lineage all combined together last 4 or 5 centuries, last 4 or 5 decades in exile. Because while all the Ganden Tripas are very senior and very highly respected throne holders, they're all in their 80s and 90s when they hop on the throne. They can barely do anything. But Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe has done so much work that no comparison with any other work. I said even the work of His Holiness Dalai Lama has been greatly boosted by the work of Lama Zopa. Therefore, the reason that they have decided not to cremate his body, but to embalm him, is a good decision, because his body and his identity is not, he doesn't die with a physical death, but he is immortal. His contribution and his example as an amazing monk, amazing bodhisattva, really as a philanthropist, as I said. I don't know how much time that Lama Zopa had to do retreat because of his demanding request by all the centers to here, go there. So I have been contemplating a bit, only if the Lama Zopa had more time to do retreat than traveling everywhere, including those precarious places in a very high altitude place. He could have lived a little bit longer. But even though some Tibetan commentator has been saying that Lama Zopa took Tonglen. He took all the sufferings, problems, negativities that they were going on around just a day or two before he passed away, about recent sort of things about His Holiness Dalai Lama's playful kind of activities to a young Indian boy. And some people have said that he actually took on all the negative karma of that on him, and then decided to pass away, took on all the sufferings as as a practitioner. I don't know whether that is or not, but he's definitely was a really as a good example of a Kadampa monk, and a good, very highly disciplined monastic. And so his death is not a shock, not a loss. Sure, of course it's a loss because he's not there, but his inspiration will never die away, and he will remain. And there are quite a lot of the centers, even though numbers of maybe a couple of hundred are just small groups as our centers are. But there are a few significant centers that has a fairly established property and so on. And I mean, they all largely do depends on whether people honor the deceased Lama and his wishes or not, or they create their own group and form their own centers. So some of the FPMT centers have suffered that because of many of the geishas started their own centers, and thus weakening the very force of the main center to which they came to teach in the first place. So I think that now the legacy and that the disciples should follow is how to fulfill some of the big projects that Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa started, such as the big stupa project in Bendigo. I think Ian Green is doing a fantastic job. So that's and then the Maitreya project has had a lot of setbacks all these years, and couldn't do in Bodh Gaya. Now it is relocated in Kushinagar. So that big project had thousand people have been donating and doing a lot of things. And many people have been saying, where is that? What's happening with the project? So there are a few big projects that these two lamas have started, and some of them really have taken much longer time. This is we're talking about 40, 50 years project, both of these. And big stupa project is now coming shape, and Maitreya project also, I'm told the place has been already being relocated in Kushinagar, which has now built an international airport by Indian government. And so therefore I think Maitreya project is also to take off. So I just wanted to people to reflect on this amazing inspiring work and that Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe has achieved from two fairly kind of ordinary monks, really. And Lama Yeshe is a very dynamic teacher, but he has no real status in any of the Gelugpa hierarchy, nor has Lama Zopa, except as a Atulku from Solokhumbu Mount Everest region. So this very unassuming duo has completely uplifted the Tibetan Buddhism, I would say Tibetan Buddhism, and in a great way. And passing away of him, Lama Zopa, now they're all wishing, oh, quickly we will find a rebirth and all of that, the Tibetan style of hope that the same thing will not happen in hastily choosing somebody and then he doesn't want to serve anymore. So I think the Buddhist organization really have a long way to learn how to continue the legacy of great masters like Lama Zopa passing away, so that this doesn't get complicated by the reincarnation system and quickly choosing a boy, and then at the beginning it looked all good, then later on the boy himself decided not to do anything. That wouldn't really work very well in the long run. I'm sure there are quite a few very good senior monks and nuns in the FPMT and good administrators. They should all have a very special meeting, how that they do not repeat the successor of Lama Zopa like other lamas, but rather to follow a good example of a good discipline, educated, and one who's very wise, one who's very loved and respected within the community, could really appoint or elect, rather than doing some Tibetan oracles or do divination and all that stuff. In the end, it looked all good on the surface, but then who knows how the young boys they choose will actually end up doing. So of course that is really up to the future leaders of Foundation of Preservation Maya and Tradition. But I, as a great admirer of one who's inspired by the works of Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe, and who's very indebted to their work, and would like to just have this reflection today. And so among here, those of you who, some of you may have met and known Lama Zopa a little bit. If you have a few moments to reflect as a part of this tribute, please feel free to raise your hand and make a comment, because we got a bit of time to do that. Yes, please, Kathy, can unmute yourself.
Thanks, Rinpoche, for your reflections. They were truly warming and heartening, and photos, which is really good to see. Thank you. I met Lama Zopa in the late 90s at Shenrezig Institute at Udlo, and I attended quite a few teachings and did an empowerment. And the thing that stands out about Lama Zopa is his compassion. He was just so soft-hearted, and people just loved him. When there was an announcement that Lama Zopa was coming to Shenrezig, people got so excited, and it was always such a warm time. Some of his teachings got really long. I remember attending one that he did, and it was on In Praise of Great Compassion, a beautiful song that praised compassion. And he would just get so moved that he would just sit with tears streaming down his face for a really long time. And he just oozed compassion, and people felt that compassion, and it was really, really strong. And so some of the teachings got really long, and some of them didn't finish until well after midnight. And people were really affected by his compassion. And I think that he can't fail to be reborn for the benefit of sentient beings because of the compassion. Wherever he's born, whether someone is chosen in haste or not, he will emerge, and his great compassion will shine on for sentient beings. There's no doubt about that. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Kathy. Anyone else? Yes, Claire.
Hello, Rinpoche. Thank you so much for that lovely tribute. Personally, I never met Lama Zopa Rinpoche, but I feel like his energy really was transmitted to me by three very important occasions. One was sharing a house with Jan Crawford, and he was one of the first retreats that she ever went to. Buddhist retreats was with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and she would often talk about how life-changing that was. And I shared a house with her for 3 years, and she was always encouraging me to go up to the Buddhist temple at Kalkopa. And finally I did, and that got me on the path. So his Lama Zopa's contact with Western students was really embodied in that impact he had on my good friend Jan, who then went on to be, she continues to be a very good Dharma student. And then Nelson, visiting the Undercurity Centre there, which is the FPNP Centre, was always just so delightful to go to a centre that was totally dedicated to having 21 Tara statues in the Nalanda Hall, and always having projects and a lovely supportive Sangha in place, and people going from Undercurity or Nelson over to the Tenrezit Centre for extended teachings and retreats. That energy of Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe was very much transported into Nelson, and I think that centre was, they invited His Holiness Dalai Lama to come and to consecrate the stupa, the stupa they had built at the roadside of their centre. So very much seeing the successful transition of teachings into Chinrezig Centre, and then from that down to Nelson and the top half of the South Island, New Zealand. And then the Jambala Retreat Centre, which was set up by the sea, and also on the upper top of the South Island, by a very dedicated student of Lama Zopa. And that was a very simple hall. It's still standing. It's a retreat centre for half of the year, and a backpackers canoe place for the second half of the year, the summertime. But the hall there is very simple and beautiful and overlooks the sea. And behind it is this little round mud retreat house, which is available for retreatants to go in. And there's little photos of Lama Zopa in there, and I again see him, a much smaller basis, but with the power of his compassion and his retreater transposing into one person's life to create the centre and to have it available to a whole range of people, and to have a retreat hut available for people to go and further their practice. So, although I had never met Lama Zopa or Lama Yeshe, I have benefited greatly from those who did meet and were touched by his compassion and his sattva nature. Thank you, Rinpoche, for making this time available.
Thank you. Yeah, this is what the interconnectedness of how interdependent all things are, because people try to think, oh, we are this, they are that, as the schools and lineages, traditions. They have no idea how interconnected we all are. And we have to be big, because it's the same Buddha and his teaching that brought that Dharma spread into all parts of the world. And so that story, even say you haven't met, but through his student and through his work, we get inspired, and now he know. That's exactly what I wanted to highlight. When I was at the conference about 3 weeks ago in Sydney, I was telling, I could see all the 95% of those people, all due to Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa's work. And I was included. And I don't know who, there may be one or two centers, like other centers of different other Tibetan traditions who may not think that way, but I always rejoice anyone really, particularly those whose activities are really bodhisattva-like. And Lama Zopa is also one of the really devout disciples of His Eminence Chogyam Rinpoche. He's the one who brought some of the senior Gelugpa Lamas all the way from India, because Gelugpa Lamas don't really receive any teaching from other tradition, remember? When His Holiness Dalai Lama received Hevaja Empowerment Lamdre from His Holiness His Eminence Chogyam Rinpoche in the early 80s, and then that sort of opened the gate. And who followed the suit among Gelugpas? Only Lama Zopa. Lama Zopa then kneel down, prostrate, go to Chamchen Lagan, saw Chogyam Rinpoche, ask him to give many empowerment or collection sadhanas. When His Eminence did agree, Lama Zopa wrote to some of the Gelugpa teachers, and half a dozen of them actually came at Lama Zopa's persuasion. Otherwise, those staunch Tibetan Buddhist teachers, they don't go to other lineages. They're so narrow and so narrow-minded, and maybe they're all contented with the teaching they have. I'm not saying they're narrow-minded. But Lama Zopa encouraged the Kirti Tulku Rinpoche and Chado Tulku Rinpoche and quite a few prominent Gelugpa teachers came all the way to Kathmandu and received teachings and many empowerments from the Seven and Chogyam teaching Rinpoche. And Lama Zopa is also very follow examples of His Holiness Dalai Lama. Subsequently received teaching from Nyingma teachers or Kagyu teachers, and he was the only one, it appears, that at least those among I know who actually are like His Holiness Dharma, go and approach teachers of other lineages and receive empowerment, teachings, invite them. And so that shows that how much Lama Zopa revered and honored every teachings and advice of His Holiness Dalai Lama, exactly what he said. So therefore, his devotion to his gurus, to his precepts, and to his practice is the merit that the organizations such as Foundation Preserve Mahayana Tradition. Of course, they may have certain rules of not inviting other teachers of other lineages, maybe not inviting even other teachers from Gelugpa tradition. They may have that rule, but nevertheless, those teachers they invited, they finished their term and they started other centers. So the centers they cannot allow to go, but they actually started because of Lama Yeshe's work, Lama Zopa's work. So some of the kind of rules they have are a little bit rigid. I don't think it's not quite wishes of the Bodhisattva's way, but nevertheless, all the non-FPMT centers, if you look at any Tibetan Buddhist center within Gelugpa, most of them are offshoots of Lama Zopa, like all the centers of the Geshe Loden centers and Kecho Rinpoche centers. There's at least half a dozen in Australia that are quite large and well established. They're all because of Lama Zopa's activities, and they completely allow them to do whatever they do, and never put a resistance. And because this is how you do Dharma work. So some organization they develop as an offshoot, but they don't honor the other one from where they came from. I think they should think again. They should even the thousands of the centers of New Kadamba group, which is largest group in by the way, any Tibetan Buddhist organization. They are much larger than any one Tibetan Buddhist. They should also rejoice that their centers, which are doing very well, which I rejoice them too, that they came as a result of being part of FPMT, as whose work then brought their teachers in the West and in the first place. So of course this is time to make peace, and when are you going to make peace? Even as a Buddhist, you don't try to feel split always, because there may have been some nasty conditions at the time, but now it's good to come to resolve and honor and Lama Zopa's contribution, Lama Yeshe's contribution, so that the huge Tibetan Buddhist centers growth in the West, and there are other lineages too, but at least all the Gelugpa tradition monasteries are largely due to their noble work. And this kind of memory and recognition, and therefore following the examples of that, is a very very important one. So having said that, then of course, as you may have heard, Lama Zopa's passing away was fairly tragic because of the high altitude sickness, and in the Tibetan media, they're saying, "Oh, he's died so tragically." It didn't look like he didn't look like there was much of a tukdam, even though they put him up like that. But I don't buy into that because uh, um, great practitioner pass away. Not everybody have tukdam. Lama Zopa doesn't need tukdam. His whole life was a tukdam. he, his whole life was a tukdam, you know. So because his color was a little bit sort of affected by the high altitude sickness, they didn't maybe there wasn't a radiance or there wasn't much of that. But there are many practitioners who pass away, great practitioners, but they don't have any tukdam. That doesn't mean they didn't realize clear light. They realized clear light all along. So when some Tibetan media was saying, oh, passing judgment about only some lineage practitioners produce with tukdams, others don't produce. This kind of critical. I think this is a time of rejoicing how much of his work and his legacy, his inspiration, his noble qualities will never go away. Whether he was sitting up 10 days in tukdam or whatever, that's really not. His work and his teaching is the tukdam or relic that we must not forget. We shouldn't be searching for material things to hold as a relic to fight over it. We rather should remember the bodhicitta that he lived and the good samaya that he observed and how careful he was to his daily practice and observing those. Those are the real tukdam. Tukdam means holy meditation. Those are real practicing bodhicitta is the highest kind of what we call highest kind of of meditation, really. And even whether there's any signs like rainbow and all these spectacles and so on. I think that we don't need to mystify. We have to be practicalize how much valid contribution of such great beings our world enjoys. So with this in mind, unless there's one or two who have some memories to share, if you have, please put your hand up. We might have a few more minutes before we close. Yes, please. Who's that? Is that Catherine? Please go ahead.
Yeah, I went to Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa's Shenrezi Institute in Queensland, and I remember just the welcoming feel of the institute, and also all the volunteers that were helping to support the centre. And I remember I went to listen to the Bodhisattva's way of life, so it's quite fitting that we follow in watching the teachers, how they actually are how they're doing the Bodhisattva work every day, and they're also the teaching, so others can follow in the footsteps. And I think they were doing on a Wednesday they did a Bodhisattva's way of life, and on a Friday they would do Rays of the Sun. So they're very much into the study of Buddhism. But I didn't receive teachings from Lama Zopa, but I did meet him briefly when I was on pilgrimage. I was going around the temple in Kathmandu, and we bumped into each other, and he just said to me, "Where are you from?" And then he laughed. And then he just, he continued and he was doing his prayers. And there was a big group of people come to form around him. And then just recently I was in Bodh Gaya and I stayed at the FPMT Centre, and Lama Zopa's residence was there. And he was attending the Dalai Lama's teachings. And I was able to, when he arrived, I was there and able to offer a kata.
He just gave me a big slap on the head and then laughed and continued on heading towards his residence. And I also, a couple of occasions, he was doing Kora around the Mahabodhi temple and just happened to meet, while he was doing the Kora as well, and just offer a kata, and he just, gracefully placed it over the head, and he said, he's just laughing. He just had this joy and laughter. Everything seemed to be a joy to him. So, and I just, I haven't received the teachings, but I've received through other of the students and other kempos and other geshes. Some of the teachings that flow on and keep continually flow through the others that they've transmitted to and given empowerments to. So I'm just rejoicing the small, slight opportunities, but the connections have an impact. So thank you, Rinpoche, for giving the opportunity and sharing.
Welcome. Thank you. Zamo, did you have something to share? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Rinpoche. I didn't receive teachings from either Lama Zopa or Lama Yeshe, but I just wanted to thank you for presenting this session today. It really reminds me how our group here in Australia is part of a network around the world, and I hope that here in Australia we can all be mindful of not only that worldwide network, but how precious the teachings that we have all received are, and do our bit to ensure the continuation of them. So thank you.
Welcome, thank you. Yeah, we've been having the conference in Sydney, and we have been trying to say that how distant the centers and organizations are, and they hardly do things together. They're all keeping themselves and and only when His Holiness Dalai Lama came, then we all meet, and then we say hello, and then we just sat in the teaching, and then we went off again. We never have time together. I said, now that His Holiness Dalai Lama is not able to come, we should meet at least once a year and invite to each other's centers to show where we are at and maybe seek help from each other, advice, that we should not be fragmented and in the name of lineages and name of schools. We are all followers of the Triple Gem. We shouldn't be Tibetan-centric, Tibetan-centrists. We should be Nalanda Buddhist followers that His Holiness Dalai Lama has been strongly advocating. All the curriculums in all the monasteries are studying Nagarjuna's texts, Chandrakirti's texts, Asanga's texts, Vasubandhu's texts, Dharmakirti's texts. They are not, nobody is studying any original writings of any Tibetan tradition. If they are commentary to those Indian teachers. If they remember that, then of course we will slowly lose our senior teachers because of their age and so on. If the students do not work together and network, and that we as a one big family of networking, and then we will never grow to become good and learn from each other and help each other. So that's why it's very important to honor teachers like Lama Zopa, whether your organization is associated with his or not. That's not the thing. We are meant to rejoice anybody's virtues, from the ordinary sentient being to all the Buddhas. And how do we rejoice them if we don't actually include them in our heart and in our mind and in our inspiration? So that's why, of course, today's one is mainly just organized like this, and I'm hoping to organize one such thing with all the resident Tibetan teachers in various centers in Australia, so that all of them get to reconnect like this and talk about how we are all arrived in Australia doing what we're doing because of Lama Zopas, because of the inspiration by teachers like Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe and His Holiness Dalai Lama and and so on. So this is, in the seven limb prayer, rejoicing the merit of others. You can read that one verse in the seven limb prayer as a token, but actually do not do any rejoicing, and then it become a mere like lip service, So that's why we should always do that in terms of in our everyday life too, and not think about the flaws of each other or flaws of others, but try to see the good that they have brought or they have introduced us, and then talk about those and try to bring our spirit to be inspired by them. So with this, I think we're going to conclude here. Thank you very much. I can't see any hands going up, but I'm sure you all ditto all the above, and may Lama Zopa's wishes and legacy will be fulfilled, because we know that he's got very many devotees and disciples, and I think they should all remember how Lama Zopa was like a bodhisattva, not think of how Gelugpa he was. That's not important. How bodhisattva he was, and then try to do all the works with a little bit more inclusively, inclusively. Sometimes when I invite some of the teachers, Tibetan teachers, they say, "Oh, they have no permission to go to other centers." So I say, "Oh gosh, you're so sad, so sad. If I got invited, I will never refuse." It's also it's Bodhisattva vows. You shouldn't refuse if somebody invites you. So there are few things like that. Some of the organizations are. So we try to invite other teachers from other lineages, and when we get our hands on them, because we wanted to promote this international brotherhood and sisterhood, rather than one specific lineage centric way of looking at it, because those are gone are the days. We now live in a global community. So may the work and teachings of living Kadamba monk, Lama Zopa, truly was one. Simple monk, the simple monks usually inspire. Simple monk, and if the Gelugpas all meet together, they don't offer a very high seat for Lama Zopa, because he doesn't fit in any of the hierarchy of all the abbots of big monastery and so on. But actually, his work is much bigger than all of them combined, and they all know that, and they will know that at least now. And we rejoice the amazing, unassuming work that these two great beings have accomplished, and may we be able to remember their good examples, and like we are trying to do today. And thank you very much, everyone. Let's do the dedication of merits. His Holiness Dalai Lama has written a short prayer at the insistence of people, ask the quick rebirth prayer, but Lama Zopa doesn't need to be reborn. His life is immortal. If he is reborn, of course, it will be icing on the cake if it's necessary. Thank you, everyone. Whatever merit I have, may all be because the love is true. The Maya Naji courage, Manjushi Nude, Azama, Trabajadi Lava, following all the Hezamba. I shall get all the matter, matter has a lambody jeda, teba, where an so where has been permitting freely with the generation. Thank you, everyone.